I turn the decay time way up.
Oh, now we're getting somewhere.
Now it's starting to sound like dub techno.
What is up? Felix Flair here, back from the Thomann studios here in Berlin, and actually with a guest that I already had on the show a couple of weeks ago, Altstadt Echo. He's been here for performance, which was really nice. So we're gonna link it down in the description if you have missed it so far. Anyways, today you are here to explain to us a bit, dub techno sound design, especially the legendary dub techno kind of echo-ish chords. So what did you bring for us here today?
Cool. So today we're going to be using an Ableton Push in order to basically produce the most basic dub techno chords that you possibly could. Now in the last video I was using the Ableton Push basically as a performance tool. We're pivoting in this one and using it purely for production. And really all we're going to cover is how to make those classic echoing dub techno chords. And I think we can do it pretty fast. And we're also going to do it using only stuff that's included in Ableton. There's no third-party VSTs. You don't need to go out and download anything. Specifically, I'm using Ableton Live 10 Suite. Some of the tools that we're using I think are specific to Suite, but you can always swap them out for some of the more basic stuff that's included in the regular version of Ableton.
So basically for everyone who has any DAW and any basic tools, we can apply this. And it's the most important sound that you need, of course, if you want to start out with dub techno. So shall we get into it?
Yeah, let's dig in. So we have one MIDI channel here. We need to start off by adding in some kind of sound source. So let's pick out some kind of synthesizer. Now obviously you can make dub techno using just samples, but synthesizer is a little bit more common. So here we have just analog. Sounds great. Sounds like an annoying robot or something like that. So by default, we have two oscillators going. I'm going to go ahead and pitch one of them down and change it to a sine wave rather than a saw wave. So we add just a little bit of depth to things. Now, by default, analog is
more like the bass substance. Of
exactly. A little bit of weightiness to the chord. So by default, there's also a low-pass filter turned on analog. I'm going to go ahead and just turn down the frequency cutoff just to make things a little bit less saw-y and annoying.
It's softer.
Cool. So if we click over here, we can actually get into the more advanced settings of the synthesizer. And one of the things I want to change right away is going over here to the envelope for that filter that we were just turning down the cutoff on. And I want to turn down the decay a little bit, just to make it slightly more plucky.
Some movement to how the filter actually applies on that.
It's a little bit subtle. Later on, we'll probably go back and actually also assign an LFO to that filter, but maybe let's get some notes down before we start messing with anything like that. Now, dub techno, of course, is basically always in minor keys. And one of the things that I really like about the Ableton Push is that if you're not so great at, playing the keyboard when it's in square form, or maybe you're not even that good at music theory in general, like me, you can just basically select a key. So we're going to put it in E, and then we can go down, put it in minor. And now,
amazing.
Now we're in E minor. Great. And so now if we want to play chords, it's as simple as that. So we have it like one starting with E, and I think this is A above it, so easy. So let's record a quick clip, and then we'll go and start adding effects to it to kind of get that dub techno sound. So I'm going to turn on the metronome just to make the recording part easier. By default, Ableton is at 120 BPM. You can change that in your preferences if you want to, but it's going to be fine for this. So. Pretty easy. Now let's take a look at that clip. So we can zoom in over here if we want to. We probably don't really need to, but one thing we're going to need to change is the loop position. So I'm going to move it just before that first note. The loop length, we don't want it to be 3. That's going to get weird. Now, if I play it right now, one thing you'll notice right away is that the first chord it probably won't actually play because I was a little bit early. We can fix that over here just by pressing the quantize button. Simple as that. Cool. So now that we have a basic clip laid down, let's start making it sound like actual dub techno. And of course, what is more crucial in dub techno than adding in a delay?
Exactly.
Now, Ableton has a couple of different options for delays, but the one I'm going to use here is Echo.
So the sound we are used to hearing from like the deep chord, classic delay-ish chords is probably actually the Roland Space Echo in most cases, I assume.
Probably, yeah. They might also be using delay pedals and stuff like that, because I know for a fact that in most cases with the really professional dub techno, you're definitely not using just one delay. You're chaining them together. Sometimes they're even chaining together different reverbs and stuff like that, which is wild. Anyways, so let's turn up the feedback on this delay a little bit. And if we click here, we can see some of the advanced options for Echo. What else do I want to do? I'm going to go into the delay options. I'm going to change this to a ping-pong delay, so it kind of bounces around your head a little bit now. And then I'm also going to go over to modulation, and I'm going to change this just a little bit. It adds a little bit of pitch modulation. If you turn up too high, it's going to sound crazy.
Okay, but it gives some super subtle movement, and also like this tape-ish effect actually, because this is also an artifact that you might actually encounter on the Space Echo.
Yeah, the kind of wow and flutter that you get with tape stuff. But anyways, if I had this all the way up, it sounds too crazy, so I add in just like a tiny, tiny bit like that. That sounds good. Okay. Cool, so we have a delay down. It sounds reasonable. But one thing that I don't really like about the ping-pong is that it's so wide that it almost stops sounding like one kind of sound source. So I actually want to narrow the stereo width of that. So the next thing I'm going to add is actually, I need to go to audio effects. I'm just going to add in a utility because it's basically the most straightforward way to control stereo width. Well, we don't need to make it completely mono, but we're gonna tone it down a little bit. So maybe let's put it down to like here. Okay, that probably sounds a little bit better. What's next? Maybe let's just add in a reverb, right? Because I mean, what are the most classic effects? Of course, it's got to be delay and reverb. So let's go ahead and just add in the reverb next. But the thing you need to watch out for with reverb, not just in dub techno, but in any genre, is that it can easily make things really, really muddy. You can kind of like move everything to the background too much, and it's just going to start to sound bad and distant. So I'm going to turn down the dry wet a little bit, so we get still a significant amount of the dry, unaffected signal through there. I'm going to turn the decay time way up.
Oh, now we're getting somewhere.
Now it's starting to sound like dub techno. And we can do a few other little things here to kind of add some character. Like we can add some chorus to the reverb tail, which is nice. But there's one important thing I want to do that almost always gets overlooked when people are just getting into making dub techno, and that's controlling the input frequencies to your reverb. Because if you don't, and you let in too much of the low end into your reverb, you're going to be left with something that's really muddy, and your kick drums are going to struggle to punch through it. It's just going to be a mess. So if we go to input/reflections, we can turn on the low cut, and we can record the input frequency, or not record, we can alter the input frequency like this. I think it's probably good how it is. Cool. So that sounds pretty good. So what else do we want to do here? Maybe let's add the LFO to the filter that we set up in analog. Now, by default in analog, let me go into the advanced options.
So analog, is that like a variation of the operator in Ableton, or is it an additional?
Well, operator's an FM synthesizer.
Okay. So
analog is more additive, subtractive, whatever. By default, the LFO isn't turned on. So before we do anything, we actually have to turn it on. Boom, now it's on. I'm going to want to have it synced with the beat. So let's turn that on, and I kind of want to have it moving kind of slowly. So let's do something like that, maybe. And now we need to go ahead and go to filter modulation in order to have our filter frequency affected by that LFO. So then I'm going to turn this up a little bit. Okay. Is that doing stuff? I think so. It's kind of hard to hear on these speakers. Okay, I'm gonna actually turn up the volume on this just a little bit. Okay, now we can hear it a little bit better. I'm gonna go back into analog and take a second look at this LFO real fast. Okay, that all looks good. Let's go back to this. Turn this. Okay, so yeah, it's definitely working. But we don't need it to be that extreme. There we go. So now, we have the basics down. So the real question here is like, what can we do to make our dub techno chord sound a little bit more unique and have a little bit more life and movement to it? So at this point, it really comes down to finding ways to add modulation to the sound or character to the sound. One of the ways that I like to do this is with a simple auto filter. So let me go down to that. And specifically, I'm going to use a notch filter. So if we go over to this.
Yeah, that's also my go-to technique to make anything move.
Exactly. So I'm going to turn the resonance kind of high so that the notch here is really narrow. Yeah. And then of course we need to LFO it. So I'm going to turn it to sync. I'm going to turn the LFO up just so you can immediately hear it kind of moving all around. Here, I'll move this to the end of the effect change.
Demonstrational purpose.
Exactly. So you can hear it going crazy. We don't need it to go that fast. Let's turn it up to like maybe 3.
Yeah. Where is it in a chain right now?
So right now it's at the very end.
Yeah.
I'm not going to leave it at the very end though, because it'll end up sounding a little bit too obvious.
Yeah.
If we want to move it earlier in the effect chain, if we just hold down here, and then we can turn this knob, I'll go ahead and put it right after the, just right at the beginning actually.
Yeah. So what the LFO is doing now is actually essentially moving this notch up and down, but we don't see it visualized here. Or
right. Yeah. It doesn't actually show it here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if we think about, okay, what's one more thing maybe that we can add to make this sort of chord sound more unique? And I think a phaser is a pretty common way to go. So let's just slap on a phaser. Okay, load that up. I'm gonna move this to the end just for the demonstration because otherwise it'll sound a little bit too crazy. LFO it a bit, change the frequency and the feedback. So that sounds a little bit too extreme.
Yeah.
But if we turn down the dry wet, and then maybe put it somewhere earlier in the effect chain. There's not really a right or wrong place to put it, but yeah.
Yeah, now we have some like super organic movement.
Yeah.
It's not like super predictable.
Right, and it's subtle enough that it doesn't sound like, you know, someone's sitting there just turning knobs and stuff like that. It kind of like seems to move by itself kind of nicely. Yeah. And so that's the basics of it.
Yeah, that was super quick and easy, and I think everybody should be able to start out doing their first dub techno tracks right now. All right, thanks for showing us your craft, and I think that was super comprehensive and should be very easy for everyone to get started making dub techno. Anyways, if you guys at home have any more questions, feel free to let us know in the comments, and I think you can reply to all of them.
Yeah, look forward to it.
Yeah, thanks for watching. See you soon. Peace out.
See ya.